So this one today, I've been thinking about it. Sandra Bullock's been in the news, and she's going through this divorce, and it was really kind of tragic. When I was a young man, there was a basketball player by the name of Will Chamberlain, and he talked about having 23 girls in 10 days. And you're smiling. And he talked about, over 2,000 women in his life that he had sexual relations with. And you see it every time you turn on the news and all that kind of stuff. You're a young guy. So the question I have, is it, and I really don't know, is it even feasible to think that you could get in a committed relationship and have a sex with only that person for the rest of your life?
I think humans got it wrong, personally. I think amongst all the thousands of creatures on Earth, we are one of, 3 humans, penguins, and one other that commit themselves to one person forever and ever and ever, whereas every other creature can, do what they have to do and keep moving.
So here's a question I have with you. I don't know if you're in a relationship or not, but say you go to get married one day. And you stand up there and you take the vows and you commit to this person, but not really.
I think ultimately I want to believe it's possible, and it is possible for many people. I just think that human nature, it's a flawed idea, just based on temptation and other factors. But I know that once I do say I do, I want to be able to not.
So would you have an open relationship or not? Let's say you marry a young lady and you say, I realize that temptation is temptation. You got to give me a little room here. I got to give you a little room.
Right. That'd be great. Ideally, me having a little wiggle room would be great, but then I can say with ease, I'm a hypocrite because I wouldn't want to grant her the same sort of wiggle room. So ultimately, I know that what I just said was a double standard. I know that I'd be a hypocrite to say so, but
you're being honest.
But I'm being honest. I would not want my wife in our relationship for it to be open, for her to be able to have relations with other people, even if the idea was ideal for myself.
Yeah, I remember. Do you ever see a movie called City Slickers?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Rent it sometimes. It's quite funny. Who was in that? Do you remember, Greg?
Yeah, it was Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal, a bunch of guys like that. And he's riding along on a horse, and he's talking to these guys, and they go and they do this kind of a thing where they're herding cattle. The guy looks over at him, and he says, listen, would you have an affair on your wife if she never knew? And he looked back, and he said, well, no, you never know if she'd never know. And he said, well, let me say this. What if a Martian came down, and she's absolutely gorgeous? Just gorgeous, but she's from a different place. She's going to get on and she's going to fly away. She'll never be back here. Would you do that? Your wife will never know. And he said the most amazing thing. He looked over at you and said, I'd know.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And I think it just comes down to that individual's morals, right? If what's wrong is wrong. So, like he said, he'd know. That's enough for him to not. And there are lots and lots of people that would not. Unfortunately, these days it's become so everyday, mundane. When we hear about cheating, it's just so regular.
Well, let me. You're an interesting guy, and I'm enjoying this conversation. Let me go another step with that. The dating scene. You go out before you get married, and everybody's kind of like, okay, you go a couple dates, and then you're expected that you get it on and all that. So you might have, I don't know how many relationships before you actually get committed. And then all of a sudden you're saying to that person or to yourself, now I'm shutting it down. I'm just with this one person. Is that even feasible because you've had all of this experience before you got married, and then it's like, okay, this is it for the rest of my life?
Yeah. And that exactly is the difficult part. It's that you're giving up something that you once had so easily. And that is what's so difficult for people. Exactly what you said. That you were free to do, no pun intended, whatever you wanted. And now, the institution of marriage tells you that you cannot. Yeah, I think that I don't want to say impractical, but it's obviously, I think it's flawed. The institution itself is flawed.
So do you think the institution, the concept of being committed, is flawed?
Not necessarily being committed, but just when it comes to certain temptations, I think that we're always going to be tempted. And if, let's say, hundreds of years ago, it was decided or people acted differently and we were trained to not have to be with just one person, but we could still be in a committed relationship with one person, I think today we would obviously think completely different about it. But we've been not subjected, but we've been trained over the last hundreds and hundreds of years and so on that it's one person and that's how it should be, as opposed to all of the other animals on Earth that didn't go that route.
So if you think of one time, if there was a whole thinking pattern that just said, hey, it's good to live with somebody, but, hey, there is no moral thing here. Sure, you can go out and have fun because you're always going to come home to this other person.
Yep.
That if that had ever caught on, we wouldn't be having the problems we're having today.
100%. Like I was having an argument just maybe 5 days ago with a couple of friends, and basically what the group of friends were saying, we were actually talking about Tiger Woods, and they were saying that because he lives in a completely different world with the power and the wealth, that Elin, his wife, should never have expected him to conform to the norms that the rest of us normal people conform to. So they basically said that, in certain situations, if people just expected, if the expectancy was different, then we wouldn't be blowing it out of proportion. It wouldn't be a big thing because we would just expect. It's kind of like with a lot of other athletes, not Tiger because we kind of held him in a higher regard, but we expect a lot of the football players to do it. So if we heard about it, it wouldn't even make news because we expected basketball players, etc. Will Chamberlain, it wouldn't be a surprise.
Well, the current report out is that Tiger Woods got in the trouble he got into because of the people he hung out with. I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about, and they mentioned names, certain basketball player that was Michael Jordan, right, and various others. And they just said because these guys had all, what they were implementing is that these guys had this kind of a lifestyle, and he just fell into that.
My personal thinking is that Tiger's always been who Tiger is. Like, just on the flip of what you said, I don't actually think that Tiger was influenced. I think Tiger was Tiger, and as a result of his management company and promotions in these huge corporations, he was trained and courted to be a certain way. I think that if it wouldn't have helped his image as greatly as it did to get married and have children the way it did, if Tiger just stayed single and did what he did, nobody would be that surprised. But it's because of the image that they packaged for him that he was just above the rest. And as a result, we were so let down when we found out that he was like the rest.
Does anything shock you anymore?
Nothing. So what do you think?